Have you had any trouble making a bowl on the wheel? I'm here to solve all of your problems. Watch clay turn from a lump into this beautiful bowl. I'm going to start by compressing this clay onto the bat. Just trying to grip it uniformly so that it creates something that is somewhat centered prior to even starting the wheel. I'm now going to start the wheel and start the centering process. I start by applying downward pressure. I like to use the analogy of a suction cup. I want to force any air or water out from underneath my clay, getting my clay firmly affixed to the bat before I apply inward pressure. I'm now applying inward pressure and driving my clay up. This is going to be cycling this mass through and creating a homogeneous piece of clay. There are a couple little tricks to knowing if your clay is on center. My favorite one is just resting your hands on the clay and looking away from it. And if the clay is moving, or if you feel your hands moving, then it's a good indicator that you're not on center. If you place your wrist on the splash pan and hold your finger here and the clay is undulating to and from your finger, it's also a good indicator that your clay is not on center. This is the foundation of the object that we're making, so much like we wouldn't want to build a house on a crooked foundation, we want to really take our time and get our clay on center. So now I'm going to be opening the pot, and I'm using my pointer finger from my dominant hand. I'm supporting with my non-dominant hand, and you'll notice that throughout this whole process, I'm supporting myself in a triangular motion. So my arms are in close to my body, my hands are supporting one another, and I'm applying pressure to the clay. As I start to open in a conical fashion, the friction will dissipate the moisture on the surface, and I'll need to gently release and add a little bit more water as I continue to drive that opening down. The bowl requires a continuous curve, and that continuous curve starts right now. We want this opening to go from the center all the way out to the edge of the clay so that we get a nice, uninterrupted interior to our bowl. Alright, so next I'm going to be pulling my walls up, but before I do that, I want to push the foot of my pot in. So I'm pushing my finger against this green bat and setting the diameter of my foot on the bowl. Next, I'm going to be making pulls, so that's the act of moving the clay up the wall. My primary pressure is coming from my outside hand, and my interior hand is just there for support. At the end of this stage, my hope is to have equal wall thickness, about 1/4 of an inch from the bottom to the top. So I'm applying more pressure where my wall is thicker and letting up pressure where my wall is thinner. Alright, so now I've achieved equal wall thickness from bottom to top, and I'm going to start the shaping process. To do that, I'm no longer using any water. I want to use compression to get a nice strong bowl. So I'm going to start out by using this straight-sided rib on the exterior of my pot, compressing my clay against the rib. I'm removing visual information here, like any sponge marks or things from the throwing process, but I'm also compressing the clay particles on the exterior of my pot, creating a nice tight surface so that as I open out, my pot will hold the shape that I give it. Next, I'm going to slow down my wheel and I'm going to start to open up my pot. To do that, I'm using my left hand much like a painter would use a steady stick. I'll be resting my right hand on them, holding the rib in my right hand, and gently opening out the wall of the bowl. From here, I will slowly push out and come down just into center. I'm going to evaluate the exterior shape of my ball, and I'm going to push harder where I want it to come out and let up pressure where I want it to stay put. This top-down shaping really creates tight particle compression in towards center, making for a stronger finished object. I'm just going to correct this little rim on the outside. And I'm going to move on to the decorative elements of this ball. The first thing that I want to do is I want to give an inward angle to the rim of my pot. This allows me to drink that last bit of cereal milk or the little bit of broth that's in the bottom of my noodles or without dripping down onto the table. I'm just going to put a little bit larger of a curve into this bowl. Establish a bit of an inward angle to the lip here, making an inviting edge to bring to your mouth. And I'm just going to add a little bit of an indentation about a third of the way down the pot. Kind of frames out the food on the inside of the bowl, and just gives a little bit of a place for your eye to rest. The last thing that I'm going to do is just cut a little undercut underneath of this, making it easier for me to wire my pot off of the wheel. Now I'm going to take this wire and I'm going to wire off my pot. Just slide once underneath. This is a filament wire that I made from a piece of fishing line. Gently move this over onto my wear board.